Hi everyone, welcome to Value. So Humacyte just recently released a presentation that looks very interesting. Like, they're talking about the Department of Defense looking to stockpile their product, which is a real big confirmation of what we believed for some time. Department of Defense is very interested in their product, and their kind of statement just kind of slightly confirms that. Obviously, until the deal comes through, we don't know when it's gonna start. So firstly, let's look at the stock price. Stock price is doing fairly well today, a continuation from yesterday. Its stock price is just slightly above 550. So originally when it opened, it kind of shot up, and then it got sold down pretty heavily, like potentially traders looking for some stop losses but not finding any, and then buyers is coming back overwhelmingly strong. So like you could just see, like, just by this big bounce back up, that buyers are slightly in control at the moment, which is pretty good. And then also you're possibly looking at some shorts that are slowly recovering, because they're looking at the stock price and there's not a lot of room for them to kind of seize any more negativity. So it looks like stock price is trending upwards currently. Obviously things can change. Right now we're looking at a situation where it potentially forms a double top. It might just come down just a little bit, or it continues to power through that. We have to see how it goes throughout the trading day. We're only just halfway, so yeah, anything could happen at the moment. But let's talk about the presentation. Stock price, if the company does well, stock price takes care of itself. So at the moment, it's just patience in terms of the stock price. So this is one of the very first communications we've had from FDA, well, not from Humacyte, since they put out the statement of the FDA approval. And it basically just communicates what we believed to be the case, that it's going to take them roughly around 6 weeks, and basically the US launch is planned for early Q1, so roughly possibly start of February, if they can do it pretty early. So yeah, like, that's a really good sign. And also they have the current commercial scale of the manufacturing is about 40,000 ATEVs, so they've got plenty of capacity in the current manufacturing. So in that case, not too worried around having to expand the current manufacturing. They've got the capacity. So this is probably the more interesting slide. Like, you can go through the presentation that you can find on their website. There's a lot of kind of like graphical kind of presentation slides in this, so hence why I'll let you go through it if you want. But like, we'll probably just try to leave out some of the graphical stuff in this video, just for people that might not like the graphical stuff. So basically we've got majority of trauma vascular repair performed at level 1 centres, and approximately 200 level 1 trauma centres in the US. So if there's basically 200 centres, that's not a lot of like sales staff that you need to go out there and communicate a lot of this information. So in a way, like, the sales, you don't need a very large sales force to start contacting these centres. So you can kind of see where, in a sense, it's actually not that difficult for them to start getting those sales incoming, if they can convince these 200 level 1 centres to kind of take on the product. And the most juicy part of all is Humacyte expects the Department of Defense to stockpile for deployment to sites of conflicts. So yeah, you can kind of see that they are, still working with the Department of Defense over the years, and yeah, like, that's potentially going to be a fairly sizable contract, which depending on when it might come, obviously this is their expectations. This is not something that's guaranteed, but based on their workings of the Department of Defense, it looks like a contract is possibly incoming like eventually, which should could do wonders for the stock, obviously. Yeah, so we can also gather from this slide here that Fresenius, which is one of the largest shareholders, so originally they invested 175 million into Humacyte, and then they're also going to do global collaboration for ATEV for trauma, dialysis and PAD. And then they're also the largest provider of renal care services in the US. So basically, with Fresenius being their partner, that's potentially their gateway to markets overseas in the future. But obviously, Fresenius is very interested in the dialysis part, and there's more information on this about this in the dialysis. So for anyone that was quite skeptical around the dialysis kind of data that came out, and in comparing with fistula, there is the category firstly with women, where it firstly doesn't work as well, where there is a lot of money spent on maintaining access. So if we look at just the top kind of patients in terms of costs, it costs between 91,000 to 155,000 annually just to maintain access. So if you can basically solve that problem with Humacyte's product, that dramatically reduces costs on these patients with their product. So you can see why it's so attractive to Fresenius. And then women in general are looking around that have failed, that aren't able to really get much of the access, and they're looking at 30,000 in the first year. And then there's 20% of women that generally are likely to fail the access. And then there's 20% of women that have multiple failures in the first 6 months. And then there's 24% of women likely to have multiple hospitalizations for access complications. So if you look at that's the type of data that's really important. That's the stuff that's basically not being addressed in a sense. So here's why Humacyte's got a big addressable market, even though the data kind of had some side effects. The side effects aren't as costly as the current access costs. And then if you look at for female subgroups that are high risk, it would be obese diabetic women that have excess of 27,000 to 91,000 during the first year. So when you compare against Humacyte, if you can use their product, which say they cost 25,000 for the product, but it means a lot less cost down the road, because they can maintain access, and first year, that's going to be a first year cost, but after that the cost is going to be much lower. Then you can kind of understand the huge benefit that Humacyte's going to provide to women. So hence why when you have these kind of articles that talk about the overall data, and it's not and the benchmark fistula isn't stacking up in some sense, particularly the side effects, well, you have to look at that. Hey, fistula doesn't work for everyone, and particularly say women, and you see they've got these costs right here. They're also doing further trials, so VO12 is going to further generate more data for the upcoming application. So they're going to put the application through first, and then by the time the application gets to the FDA and they're up for review, this data should be ready, and then it's just got to go along with that to complement the application. So hence why approval has a really, really good chance, considering that it's the same product, it's just for different uses. So basically, since it's approved for trauma, by that time FDA are going to look at the trauma data, and then they're going to be able to make a decision on the trauma data in terms of how good the product is. and also they're going to look at the in terms of the application's main use when they're putting their application to the FDA, and they're looking at dialysis, and they're going to look at, is there a good benefit in terms of the patients for dialysis. And this current presentation is just basically, it's a very clear view that it has significant benefits for women, and especially obese and diabetic women, and it has significant cost savings. So hence why you can see like Fresenius is still a big supporter. Like when Humacyte got approval, they were one of the first to congratulate them publicly. So like regardless of the overall broad information in terms of data that you're seeing and those articles, like that Seeking Alpha article that obviously everyone knows about, and anyone that's watching this video has probably seen it because we're all interested in the information about this company. There isn't that much information about the company entirely, not like other stocks, it's not covered as widely. But in terms of like data and everything, you look at this and you go, yeah, like it's a clear sign of, you know, the usefulness of this company and its product, and hence why I think that's why the stock's also doing well today. Clearly some people have also seen this presentation and are quite interested in buying the stock. And I think over the longer term, stock's just going to slowly crawl upwards, but I expect it to be volatile. No, I don't expect the stock to just like shoot up unless there's a really good positive statement, which that Department of Defense one was a really good statement. Obviously those are the expectations and it's not a guaranteed deal. It's not a deal until they get the deal. Which it looks like they eventually will get a deal, because you know they've been working with the Department of Defense for so long. Department of Defense is like pretty invested in these guys, so yeah, like it's just a matter of time. Yeah, so that's all I really have to say for today. If you've got any comments or questions, post below. Until then, good luck investing, everyone.